Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Maybe your head looked about 3 feet long, and your legs were short, and your arms dragged the ground. Or maybe in another, you were suddenly 5 feet wide, and your toes stretched way out in front of you. We called them funhouse mirrors, and they were always a lot of fun as they distorted our image and made the world so different from the world we know. This week we are looking at bad guys of the gospel, and I always think of those funhouse mirrors whenever I think of Annas and Caiaphas. Not that they were fun guys, indeed, far from it. But like those mirrors, their view of the truth was distorted. And from where Jesus stood, they were trouble with a capital T. The really odd thing is that in the Gospel of John, it tells us that when Jesus was arrested, they took him to Annas to be questioned. That might seem like a really odd thing to do because the high priest was Caiaphas. If you had a religious troublemaker, the right thing to do would be to take him to the high priest for judgment. But the first place they took Jesus was to Annas, and they knew exactly what they were doing. You see, Annas had actually been high priest before. According to Jewish law, appointment as the high priest was for life, and it was a position you were chosen for because of your devotion to God, at least until the Romans came. The Romans appointed their own choice in that role, and the one they chose about the time Jesus was born was Annas. He was a good politician, playing the game well. But then a new emperor came to power and deposed him. Annas was out. At least that's how it seemed. But in his place, over the next many years, 5 of his sons and 1 son-in-law served as high priest in Israel. The son-in-law's name was Joseph Caiaphas. So the speculation is that while Annas wasn't the official high priest, he was the real power and brains behind the person with the title. Annas was truly running things. And so the first place they took Jesus when he was arrested wasn't to Caiaphas, but to Annas. Everyone knew in the end the decision was his. Annas questioned Jesus, but then sent him on to Caiaphas to make the charges formal. Caiaphas was good at the political game too, and actually held the position as high priest for 18 years. At the trial of Jesus, when the witnesses against him didn't agree, Caiaphas had to question Jesus himself. "Are you the Christ, the Son of the living God?" Caiaphas thundered at him. When Jesus answered, "I am," Caiaphas roared and tore his clothes. In those words, Caiaphas didn't hear truth. He heard blasphemy. That's what Caiaphas seems to think every time we see him in the gospel story. Jesus might heal someone or speak profound truth about God, and Caiaphas, off to the side, scoffs. And you see, that's the problem with Annas and Caiaphas. They were the highest religious leaders in the nation. They were the authority, educated. They had their theology down cold. They knew who God was and what God could do. They had God in a box, all understood and in control. The only problem was that God's imagination was a lot bigger than theirs. And God wasn't limited to what Annas and Caiaphas thought they knew. God did something different from their expectations. God sent Jesus. And that's where we're a lot like Annas and Caiaphas, because lots of times we like to think we have God in a box too. For most of us, God looks like us and thinks like us and does what we would do. We think we have God all understood, and we expect God to meet our expectations, fitting into our world our way. But our view is distorted, just like those funhouse mirrors. It's not our world, it's God's. And God can't be tamed, and God can't be caged. God does things God's way, and that makes us uncomfortable, just like it did Annas and Caiaphas. The world that Jesus came to bring was too different from the one Annas and Caiaphas knew, and it was too different for them to accept. And maybe, just maybe, we'd be well advised to learn from them to be open to the new things that God might be doing right now, no matter if they make us uncomfortable, especially if they make us uncomfortable. It is better for one man to die for the sake of the people, Caiaphas said, than for all the people to die. Isn't it funny? In the end, Caiaphas and Jesus found something on which they could agree. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.